I don't change my mind. That's okay. They can have the new one. I have the old one. Authentic.
Okay. Where is my volume?
Wow, look at that.
I might have to go to a different video if I got no volume here. All right, so I will stop this, back up.
There you go.
Yep, I don't know why that one didn't have volume, but here we go.
Gosh.
Oh my goodness.
For highway safety, front crash of a 2009 Chevrolet Malibu, a 1959 Chevrolet
It's
Bel Air.
1959, my
You can see
God.
the differences in how the new and classic cars perform in this version of the traditional frontal offset test.
Oh my
We
gosh.
conducted this test to commemorate
Mr. Brian,
the anniversary. It dramatically shows how much improvement has been made in passenger
Change
protection.
my answer.
What is that?
Mr. Brian,
Yes.
What happened?
can I have a refund?
That's fake.
Well, let's watch the rest of this and watch the difference in the steering wheels and other stuff. So it's a short video.
Opened its doors. The two
Watch the steering wheel.
Metal, glass, and plastics. Where the Malibu
Double steering wheel.
absorbs much of the crash forces ahead of the windshield.
Wait a minute.
Bel Air structure allows the
What happened, Tito Rudy?
passenger compartment.
Watch
Oh.
the steering wheel.
The impact is made worse for the Bel Air driver.
That happened today, but before that happened like that. If you have accident in the street, there is no too much accident before.
Would be likely.
Only now.
Where did you get that one, Mr. Brian?
Rating across the board.
Oh.
On the other hand, the modern Malibu provides good protection. With the dummy movement,
You just do it for durability.
Guys, can't hear the whole.
Likewise the year, there's no a lot of accidents.
Can y'all stop talking so I can hear
Okay,
it?
we can't hear the video.
Classic cars are often considered to be rock solid. This 59 demonstrates how much better today's cars are.
Pareho lang sila.
The IHS has played a key role in driving these advancements.
Hindi tama ang
Past 50
pagbanda
years,
eh.
the Institute has made a
Sideway.
huge impact.
Wow.
Roads today are safer for it. For complete
I will replay this. Now, several things happened from when the 59 was made until the 09 was made. And if you notice, the steering column in the 59 goes right up into the driver, where the 09, the steering wheel stays in place and the airbag only comes towards the driver. That's because in 1967 was really a landmark year for safety on vehicles. And we got crazy things put into required on cars like seat belts,
Wala pa seatbelt.
collapsible steering wheels, collapsible steering columns. So that column was no longer a fixed piece of metal that would go through the driver, which was very common. And also dual reservoir master cylinders, which meant that if you ran out of brake fluid for just the rear brakes, you still had the front brakes and vice versa. So that is some of the major things that were put in 1967. From there, safety continued to evolve in crumple zones and other things. Energy absorbing bumpers in 1975, I think it was 74, 75. Energy absorbing bumpers that had to not be damaged at 5 miles an hour or less, had to absorb that energy into crumple zones, and then eventually airbags. And all of this was legislated. This wasn't because the car manufacturers cared more about you. Some of the technology is because in luxury cars, it was something else to charge you more for luxury car, like airbags, and they became standard. But we were talking before about, it's not cost effective to do. There was a time in the 1950s that they said none of these were cost effective to do, including seat belts. And let's take a look at the video again. This time we can kind of be courteous and be quiet and listen to it and watch it go through.
That's the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety's front crash of a 2009 Chevrolet Malibu and 1959 Chevrolet Bel Air. In slow motion, you can see the differences in how the new and classic cars perform in this version of of the traditional frontal offset test. The Institute conducted this test to commemorate its 50th anniversary. It dramatically shows how much improvement has been made in passenger protection since the nonprofit organization opened its doors. The two cars collide in an explosion of metal, glass, and plastics. Where the Malibu crumple zone absorbs much of the crash forces ahead of the windshield, the Bel Air structure allows the lighter car to compress the passenger compartment. The impact is made worse for the Bel Air driver by the lack of airbags, head restraint, and even a seatbelt. As a result, injuries to the neck, chest, and both legs would be likely. Consequently, the Bel Air receives a poor rating across the board. On the other hand, the modern Malibu provides good protection, with the dummy movement being well controlled. Measures indicate a low risk to most body regions, though a foot injury would be possible. Beyond the safety gear, advancements in vehicle engineering give the Malibu a clear advantage in this matchup. While classic cars are often considered to be rock solid, this 59 demonstrates how much better today's cars are. And the IHS has played a key role in driving these advancements. In the past 50 years, the Institute has made a real impact. The roads today are safer for it. For complete safety,
You know, did you notice how the windshield flew out of the 1959 but stayed in the 09? You know, there's just a lot. How about the door? Did you notice how the door came off the 1959 and it slid back? Where the 09, the door stayed in place, protecting that passenger cabin and giving it structural integrity. So, I mean, a lot of things we don't think about, even down to door latches or seatbelt design or all these things have all evolved to make us much safer and much part of the system. And so it really does change. So did this video surprise you guys a little bit?
I have to admit, I watched it last night.
I figured some people
I know what's
would.
gonna happen because there's no airbag, and the seatbelt before there's no seatbelt.
Right. So even if you take the airbag out, I'd still rather be in the Malibu. And I did relaunch the poll to see if people would like to change their mind.
Well, I certainly changed my mind after watching that.
Brian, I took in consideration the 20 miles per hour. That's definitely more than that, because 20 miles per hour, I don't think you'll do that much damage to the car.
Yeah.
On the Malibu, you end up having to fix the airbags, close the electronics inside the car, close the bumper, and on the Chevy Bel Air, probably just the body, and that's it at 20 miles per hour.
Yeah,
That's what I took in consideration.
Airbags would deploy out of that. And again, like I said, whether we're doing 30 or doing 50 here, I'm not sure of the speed we're at. But regardless, it's really staggering. And that safety conveys all the way through the speed ranges. I mean, the modern car is safer regardless of how fast you're going.
Yeah,
The difference is in the perception we have is, you're right, at lower speeds, at 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, I'm not going to see as much damage on the old car, but less damage doesn't equate to more safety. Because great, the car held up, but what about me who's bouncing around inside? It's like my little dog when he goes for a car ride with me, and if I hit the brakes, the dog goes flying, right? Well, the car is fine, I'm fine, but the poor dog's not seat belted in, so he's moving. So right now we're running about 10 to 1. Only 11 people have answered the poll.
Oh,
Okay, you know what I did yesterday? I was torn because of course I considered the safety features of the 09, and then I considered the body. My husband says, "Oh, Bel Air is really long. You know, you've got a big frame, long frame." So I was like at odds. I called Chevrolet and talked to somebody in service. They picked the 59.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna call them and say, "Hey, you were wrong."
Right. Yeah. Go watch a video. You know. What is the old saying? A picture's worth 1,000 words.
They didn't watch the
I have fun with this every time. Because it is neat to look at these different things.
Mr. Brian, I have a question, Mr. Brian.
Yes.
Will it make any difference if that test was done Like say 1960 when 1959 Bel Air was like brand new?
No, it
No?
wouldn't have.
Okay.
So great question though. So it is interesting how we look at this and move forward
You,
on that.
you say you do this in every class? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I
Okay,
did it
so-
in every class.
So what were the result in most of them? Is it the same as ours?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I continue doing it. I'll end the polling on this, and I'll share the results. So we still have a couple people that would rather die, but the majority of us would like to live through an accident. So it is
89% of.
yeah,
7% didn't change their mind.
yeah,
They
Many
stick on the 1959.
yep. But no, I do it for every class. So one reason why I do it is because of just like the misconception that Connie talked about when she called the dealer about which they'd rather be in. I mean, that's a common misconception that people have, is that older cars are safer. They don't make them like they used to, all this stuff.
So,
And I think that misconception leads people to make unsafe decisions. That's also one reason why I bring out 1967, which although that was over 50 years ago now.
Couldn't you make it safer? The car body itself?
What's that?
Couldn't you add more steel to it to make it more safer?
The more steel is not the problem. You already have more than twice the steel in the 59 than you do in the 09. It's not about more steel.
so Mr. Brian, when you insured that, the insurance would rather go to 2009 rather than 1959. You're going to have an expensive insurance on 1959 then.
Yeah, but statistically now 1959s don't get that many accidents because there's not many of them and they're not on the road very much. So like my wife's 74 Nova, insurance on it is only, I just got my renewal notice, $92 a year for full coverage because it's a limited use parade
of the years
display
it's old.
insurance. It's not for driving it every day.
So they go by the years, how old is the car is.
Right.
Yeah. Makes
So,
sense.
yeah, but it's it's something that we think about and don't realize all the technology that's gone in. And I like classic cars also, but the difference in safety between a 1967 and newer car and a car older than 1967 is huge, because there's so many safety advances built into cars in 1967.
Yeah, but we thought the old car has a good body, like it's ready.
Well, they do, and they're beautiful to look at. And that's why, if I'm looking at like actually, I like the 67 Mustang better than the 65 or 66 anyways, but the 67 is so much safer than a 65 or 66 Mustang because of all the safety features built in. So if I'm going to drive it, I'm still going to be on the road with all these other cars where things can happen. I'd like to have a little more safety features. I mean, certainly a new truck is safer than my 30-plus-year-old truck. Almost will be 34 years old this year. So certainly a new truck is safer than my 34-year-old truck, even though my 34-year-old truck was very safe at the time. Because we've had a lot of technology advances, haven't we? So it's
Brian, what did it say with regard to the bumper of the Malibu? Is it the bumper absorb more?
Well, the bumper is going to absorb more, but it's the crumple zone. The body is designed to absorb the energy while maintaining the area that the driver and passenger are in and keeping it safe. So that's why the doors stayed closed. That's why the windshield stayed in. All those things are all designed about that kind of cocoon, that structural integrity around the passengers. What's in front of the firewall or behind the rear seat is completely expendable. We don't care about it. We use that to absorb energy so that energy isn't transmitted into the passenger compartment. The problem with the 59 is there's all this steel But because there's all that steel, it's actually too strong. It's actually not going to absorb the energy. Instead, it's going to transmit the energy, which at higher speed creates even more damage. So yeah, I use this video every time because it kind of gets people's attention and kind of gets people thinking. And I love the fact that Dell went and found it last night. I figured I'd have some people going to YouTube and typing it in to see if they could find a video on it.
I didn't think it would be there, but it was.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why I chose those years and those models, is because I had a video. So our supplemental restraint system, which is what we're going to talk about today. And you can see really the impact that the supplemental restraint system has on accidents and how well it protects people. And, you know, airbag systems today can have 11 or 13 different airbags. We now have airbags for the rear passengers. So, you know, we have a lot of them potentially in a vehicle. So, you know, here modern vehicles have more than 6 airbags along with side impact protection. One of the newest additions is a pedestrian airbag. We see this, it actually came out of Asia because pedestrian accidents are so common in Asia. I guess they run over people a lot there. So they actually have an airbag that pops out of the hood and onto the windshield to keep pedestrians from being injured as much when you hit them.
Oh, wow.
And that
I've never seen that.
technology came out of Asia, and Volvo and some other manufacturers have that. And I'll try to drag up a video I've used before that Volvo did that shows that. It's really interesting. But that's what that pedestrian airbag is. It actually, so when you hit them, instead of them landing on your hood and windshield, an airbag pops up and protects the person you just hit a little bit. So they still got broken legs, but at least we don't split their head open. So, you know.
Hey,
we're
Brian,
out.
Mr. Ryan, I wonder.
It's all about progress.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
I wonder how the electric cars are going to manage the restraint system, because I was thinking between the Malibu and the Chevy Bel Air. So it's like, I want to say it's like when you have a, you know, the can of soda, and if you crash it quick, you know, you crash that thing right away. But if you go, you know, slower, there's a good chance that it's gonna, you know, stand that you know, step.
Right.
So now going back to this one, because the Chevy Malibu has a lot of electronics and components in the engine compartment that will pretty much hold that crash. You know, by the time it gets to the firewall, that you know, that hit is gonna be, you know, how do you say, like it's gonna be down, it's gonna be lower. You know, the impact's gonna be lower,
Right.
than what it was before. So on the electric cars, you have a hollow compartment on the front because there's no engine, there's no, like, a lot of electronics on it that will pretty
No,
much, like,
but electric cars still have a large motor generator up there. They still have a computer. They still have a lot of heavy stuff up there. And the batteries are in back. And you're right, it does have a lower center of gravity, but that's not really going to affect how we try to protect the passengers, as far as, because we can't control when we get T-boned or when someone hits us, or even if we hit something at full speed. We can try to mitigate it by automated braking systems that brake automatically, but that has nothing to do with being electric or hybrid. That's just a braking system. We have, you know, lane control or lane keep assist. Again, nothing to do with how we're making the car go. It's about managing the steering and keeping us out of the way. So I don't think we see a big difference as far as in how we approach safety between those two. Certainly we build the cars a little bit differently because of that slow center of gravity. But by the same token, that low center of gravity, like a Tesla or Jaguar or other ones where we have all these batteries in the floor, you can't flip those cars over. The center of gravity is so low that they're not going to roll over. So there's issues that I might have with another vehicle that has a higher center of gravity, where if it gets hit on the side, it can roll over. Or these vehicles, because they have so much weight so close to the ground, you can't flip them over. So yeah, there's definitely issues like that. They're going to affect how they respond in the accident, but we're still going to want to have all these airbags and seat belts and all those things.
because before they were using just steel, but now they're going to from steel to aluminum since it's like lighter, and they want more speed. Of course, you want more speed, you have to give up weight. And because I mean, I don't think they're gonna tweak with the engine to make it more powerful. That I mean, is there more power than turbos and all those air induction to make it more powerful and extend the weight of the
Yeah,
car?
I mean, there's things they're doing to make them more powerful, but we're still limited for how fast we're supposed to go. But a lot of the safety is about how do I get rid of that energy when I stop abruptly.
Yeah.
So the old thought used to be, I just put in more steel and make it harder so that when it hits, it doesn't move. Well, all that energy is now transmitted to the other end of the steel. And if anyone's ever hit a piece of metal or hit concrete with something that's metal, like a pry bar or something, and you hit it real hard, what happens? Your hand hurts. You didn't hurt the pry bar, but your hand hurts because all that energy from that motion ends up being absorbed by your hand because it was conducted through the pry bar. On the other hand, if I take something made out of wood, I'm going to have less of a shock. Now, if I take something that is able to absorb energy, something made out of rubber or plastic, now what? Even less of a shock in my hand. Not because it's stronger than the steel I started with, but because it's absorbing the energy before it gets to me. And so a lot of injury prevention is trying to slow the driver at a reasonable pace, because if I held you in real tight and I just stopped you with the car, what about your brain? It's what? In a sea of liquid, basically. It's floating in your head. So if I stop you too quick, what happens? Your brain hits the front of your head, and now you have brain injuries, or you have bruised the brain and you have internal bleeding and things like that. So we can't just, keep you rigid and just stop you, because the parts inside, your organs, all these other things are going to continue moving, right? So we want to slow you down at a rate that's safe. And by having these crumple zones, by having the airbags, by manipulating seat belts, allows us to still give you a little bit of motion so that we can slow you down at a reasonable pace instead of just keeping you back. And then all your insides want to keep moving. But hey, we've stopped the outside. No, we need to let you, just like we let the crumple zones on a car, we need to let your body move a little bit so that we can ease the impact on the inside of your body. So it's really a fascinating science on all the things we have to do, because it's not just our injuries outside, but it's our injuries inside. I know I've been in accidents where I don't have a mark on me, but boy, my back hurts, or boy, my neck hurts, or something like that because of that movement. And there's x-rays, there's no hard tissue damage, it's all soft tissue damage. So that's one of the things we really try to, when you think of these restraint systems, it's not about keeping you in one place as much as it's about controlling your movement. So if we look at airbags here's some common names of airbags. We have a front airbag. So we now have one for the driver and the passenger. My 95 Jeep only has one for the driver. So my wife will really be unhappy if I get in a wreck because she doesn't get an airbag in that car. We have a knee airbag, which protects our legs and keeps our legs from going into the dash. The side curtain airbag helps not only with us going sideways into the side of the door or the glass, but it also helps keep some of that glass from coming and cutting me. So it does a dual purpose. And then we have a side airbag. Hold on one sec. Been out here since 4:30. I had the heater on a little bit. It's now cooking me. So we have the side airbag. Now, side airbags were originally mounted in doors, and some of them still put them in doors, but the most common place that we see side airbags is actually inside the driver's seat. So it actually splits the upholstery seam on the driver's seat and pushes out an airbag to protect your side. And that's why these seats are now have very specific stitching patterns, and they use a special thread, and it's designed so that will tear away correctly when an airbag is deployed and it wants to get out of the seat. So there's some very, very special rules and things you have to be careful of if you're repairing a seat with airbags. Now, once the airbags have deployed, they're trash. So we're going to throw them away. If I have a side airbag that is deployed, I need a new seat. Most manufacturers, if the side airbag deploys, they want the seat replaced because it puts so much force on the seat frame. They do not want the seat frame reused. Well, how much do you think an 8-way power seat costs with leather?
A lot.
A lot. $2,000, $2,500 is pretty common. So I got two seats, right? Driver and passenger. We're going along, got in a wreck. I got two seats.
5,000.
So I got $5,000 in seats. Then I've got all these airbags. And then we're going to find out when the airbags deploy, most manufacturers make us replace the airbag controller, the computer for it. And then I may have some sensors I need to replace also. So I can quickly get another $6,000 to $8,000 in airbags on top of my $5,000 for my seats. So I'm at $12,000 or $13,000 before we started even pounding out a feather or replacing a headlight.
Well, that's when the insurance will total the car.
Exactly. And that's also why we really need to be careful if you're buying a newer vehicle that has what's called a salvage title. A salvage title is a title that's created when the insurance company totals the car. So the insurance company said, car's not worth fixing, we're totaling it. And someone says, oh, I'd like to buy it back, or I'd like to buy it from the insurance company. When they put it back on the road, it gets a salvage title. So someone is gambling that I can put this car back together and make money on it for less than what it would cost to repair it. And
Illegal?
what's that?
Not illegal.
It is not illegal.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Number one, is it possible for you to make the PowerPoint larger?
Am I not sharing the right screen? I might not be. Hold on a second.
And then my other question was,
Oh, I am not. Let me make it the size it's supposed to be. I am so sorry.
awesome, thank you. My other question is about car seats in the back. So I know that when I was in a car accident a couple of years ago, I was asked if I had car seats in the car. I did not, but does that matter with whether it's a new car or an old car, where they request you to get, they'll help you get another car seat?
That might be through, I don't know if it's, oh, I know what it probably is. Has nothing to do with the age of the car. This was the insurance company, correct?
Yes.
Okay, car seats have to be replaced after an accident. So the insurance company wanted to know that so that they could pay for car seats.
And is that just because of obviously safety reasons? So it's kind of like an airbag. Once it deploys, you gotta get a new one. Same thing with a car seat, just to make sure that it's safe enough to hold up if you were ever in another one.
Correct. So it's more like the seat frame than the airbag. But yeah, basically the feeling is it may have been compromised if it's been in an accident, and car seats are there to protect kids. So
Okay.
once the kid's been protected in one accident, the car seat's done its job. You need a new one. And that's why the insurance company would have asked, because they would have had to, if their insured was responsible for the accident, they would need to replace the car seats because they are not considered reusable.
Okay.
Great
Mr. Brian?
questions. Yes,
Mr.
Del.
Brian, so what is wrong with having a salvage title?
That's where I was getting to. Okay, so if I have a car with all these computers and airbags and seats, and it gets in a wreck, and the insurance company totals it, and now someone buys it and decides they're going to fix it and then turn around and sell it, do you really think they put all the stuff in and made all the stuff work, or do you think they cut some corners? Maybe they didn't replace the seats. Maybe they didn't even put all the airbags back in. It's actually illegal to put a car back together and not restore the airbag system, but yet people do it all the time and there's no real enforcement for it. Meaning that currently when I do a brake and lamp inspection, airbags are not part of that inspection. So that has to be done on any car that's being put on the back of the road that's being salvaged. But yet, even though it's required by federal law to have the airbags working, it's not part of the California inspection. So the car would still pass and the purchaser would still be driving a car without airbags, even though they got a great deal on this 2-year-old car. And you think about it, and the reason why I said newer car is because if a car's worth, I was just looking at Camrys, new Camrys, $27,000, $28,000 plus tax. So $30,000, you drive it off the lot. And I get in a car wreck 6 months from now. So say that car is still worth $25,000. So for an insurance company to say we're not going to fix it, that means it's had $20,000 worth of damage. That's a lot of damage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. On the other hand, my daughter's car, she was driving an 87 Camry, and this was early 2000s. And actually, I guess about around 2005 or so, 2006. And she rear-ended somebody. Well, now the car is 20 years old. And the damage to the car was about $2,100. That totaled the car because the car was only retailed or booked out for $1,800. Well, $2,000 of damage is not very much damage. I fixed the car and I fixed it for a few $100. But but again, it wasn't a lot of damage that caused the car to be totaled. So I was not shy at all about buying it back and having a salvage title on a car that's 20 years old. On a car that's 2 years old, you think about how many dollars in damage it had to take in order to total that car out, in order for the insurance company to walk away and cut someone a check or go buy them a brand new car because it's only 6 months old. And yet you're thinking you're getting a good deal when you buy a salvage car that you found on Craigslist, eBay, whatever, that's 2 years old. You know, there's a reason why insurance companies would rather pay 20% more and walk away.
Okay, that's good. The reason I asked is because we have a salvage car my daughter drives. And so I was wondering if that's something that we need to address.
And what year is it?
It's she has a 2005 Scion, and she had an accident, say 5 years ago.
Okay, so she had it before and after the accident then.
Yeah, so she still
Okay.
has it. She still has it, and I was just concerned if it's something that, she needs a new car now.
No, I wouldn't be concerned with that because you had it before and you have it after. So now you're just fixing the car. Where we really see the issue, and I've seen people really get taken, where they buy a salvage title thinking they're getting a good deal and they bring it into the shop and the car is literally not safe to be on the road.
Okay.
You
Okay,
know?
because my son-in-law said, it's really drivable still, and there's really not that much damage, so they opted to keep the car.
Right. And that can be a really good call because, again, when this happened, the car is probably already, 10 years old?
Yeah.
So the amount of damage, it's like my Toyota Camry. I got hit in it and it did $5,500 worth of damage. If the airbags had deployed it would have been a total. Because the car's worth 12 or 13 and the airbags would have kicked it up over $8,000. It would have totaled it. So even though it was $5,000 worth of work for a new radiator and fender and a little bit of pull and that kind of stuff, on a brand new car, that's nothing. Of course, they wouldn't total it. But as you get into a car with close to 200,000 miles, now they start looking at, is it worth fixing? So it takes less and less damage the older the car is for it to be a total. So I have no problem, just like my daughter's car. I bought it back from the insurance company and fixed it because what else am I going to buy her? For her to drive back and forth. This is when she was right out of high school and in high school and going to junior college. What else am I going to buy her? Because she'll probably just wreck the next thing.
Yeah. And my daughter didn't want to have a monthly payment, so I'm like, okay.
Yeah. No, and my daughter kept that Camry until she graduated from college with her degree and got her big girl job and finally went and bought herself a new car. And she sold that car with a salvage title for like 12 or 1,300 bucks, and she had a line of people wanting to buy it. And I never even painted it. The fenders were different colors.
Wow.
So I mean, that was a great deal. Again, I'd taken care of the car since it was new. It was my grandmother's car. When she passed away, I gave it to my daughter. And so we knew the history of the car. The thing only had, like, when I gave it to her, 75,000 miles on it. And I'd done a lot of work to it. So it was in great shape mechanically. So she can drive an ugly car for hitting somebody.
It's just a matter of being lucky if you buy one, because we also bought one and we were lucky with ours and sold
Yeah.
ours for $3,000. So
Right. Like I said, the older it is, the less of the risk it is. What I see is people that buy a 2-year-old car. Oh, it's 10 grand under book and it's only 2 years old, but it's a salvage title. Those are the ones you really got to watch out for. Because there's normally so much money involved.
Okay, so now I know.
Is
Thank
that
you.
also because of the number of airbags and where they're located and everything due to compared to the older vehicles?
Yeah. And also, again, just the amount of money it takes to total it. I mean, think about it. If I'm driving a BMW or a Mercedes and it costs me $80,000, how much damage does it take for the insurance company to total that car out? You're talking $50,000 to $60,000 worth of repairs. And someone bought that car and is going to put it on the road and then sell it for 10 grand under normal retail. They had to cut some corners. They had to do some stuff that, you know, would concern me. And, you know, the other thing we see cars get totaled from being flooded. And they pull them out of the, you know, Texas or Louisiana after a big storm, and they start selling them out here, and they're totaled cars. And, you know, some of them are okay, but you get water in a car and everything else. I mean, all the upholstery goes, all the electronics go. I've seen people that have nothing but problems. I've seen some people that have gotten lucky and it's worked out well. You know, there's no hard and fast, never, ever, ever, or always, always, always. The point is to give you guys the information so you can ask good questions and make an informed decision on what's right for you.
Mr. Brian,
Yes.
is there a law that says the seller of the salvage title should let you know if you're buying it that it's a salvage title?
Yes, they have to let you know, and it is stamped salvaged on the title that you'll get from the person you're buying. So always read the title.
Mr. Brian, I have another question with regards to the passenger airbag. I was
Yes.
curious about that. Is that something that the manufacturers only made in Asian countries, or is that not available here?
Oh, the pedestrian airbag?
Oh yeah, pedestrian. What did I say? Passenger?
Yeah, you
Pedestrian.
said passenger.
Sorry.
No, babe. Pedestrian may be your passenger after you hit them, so it all works out. I know they start in Asian countries. I have not seen them in the US, but Volvo has a video on them, which I'll dig out and try to play tomorrow for you, to show the technology, which I've used before in class. But I don't know if they're doing it in the US market or not.
Okay, because you know, coming from an Asian country, I know that there's not a whole lot of accidents. I think I may be wrong. I stand corrected on that one, because especially in the Philippines, they don't really drive crazily over there. You know, because of heavy traffic, they can't really speed as much. So,
Right, but that's where these pedestrian airbags come to play. It's not the 60 mile an hour hit, it's the 10 mile an hour hit going through, because a lot of the roads in Asia and a lot of the cities are extremely congested. And, you know, much like Turkey and a lot of other places, the traffic rules seem to be more like guidelines sometimes.
yeah, true that.
So
Everybody drives crazy.
yeah, I've not been there, but I have seen videos. So it's, you know, it is crazy. And of course, because in vehicles, a lot of motorcycles, a lot of scooters, a lot of vehicles, they tend to be smaller and you're trying to get through an area, and a lot of pedestrians. And so, you know, statistically, I guess there's more pedestrian impacts in Asian countries, whether we're Thailand, Philippines, and so on, but a lot of the countries there. So that's where this technology was originally, that was the driving force behind the technology, was that region of the world was trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, and then you said it was made by Volvo. I don't think I've seen a Volvo in the Philippines.
Yeah, I mean, Volvo sells worldwide, and I have tons of video. I've seen tons of pictures. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube with them, on different Toyotas and Nissans and other cars you can't even buy in this country, and models you can't buy in this country where they use them. I use the Volvo one because it was actually a brand and car that people recognize in the class. So you've seen the technology move into Europe. I just am not aware off the top of my head of anyone using it in a US production vehicle at this time. But it's coming. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things. Eventually, the technology is going to get cheap enough, and the statistics are going to show how many people are being saved. And at that point, we'll probably see it come in. Because not that it's not beneficial, but what are they saying? However many people get hit by cars and die every year doesn't justify making manufacturers raise the price of a car by $75 or $100, whatever, on a new car. That's the discussion.
Mr. Brian, can you
Yes.
show us the video of that pedestrian airbag, please?
Okay, you're gonna make me get it today. All right,
I'm just curious.
not a problem. Okay. I got a couple of them here. Let me change screen. Why do we have no audio again? Oh, here we go.
Jaguar Evolve 2, engineered for flexible work.
So this is a short one, and I'll show you one that talks about the technology. There's the pedestrian airbag. This is from 2012. And it's designed to keep the person's head out of the windshield.
That's great.
I'll pull up the video I normally use. Oh, this is the one I normally use anyways. Looks like it's next. Oh, come on. Here we go. This is only about a 2-minute video and they talk about it. Volvo Cars Australia. Remember I said Asia.
The new Volvo V40 is equipped with a pedestrian airbag. It's designed to help protect pedestrians in case of an impact to the vehicle's front. Made for city traffic, where people and cars share the same space, it operates in speeds between 20 and 50 kilometers an hour. People are soft and cars are hard. And in order to try to cushion the impact, the airbag has 2 purposes. One, to lift the bonnet to create additional space between the bonnet and the hard components in the engine bay, like the engine. And secondly, to cushion the area around the windshield wipers and the lower part of the A-pillars. To deploy the system, there are sensors along the bumper edge. These advanced sensors have been developed to recognize an impact with a human-like leg form. This is unique technology, tailor-made for the new Volvo V40. The system has gone through extensive testing and computer-aided engineering in order to verify its performance. performance both in different impact situations as well as in different road and weather conditions. Along with our pedestrian detection with full auto brake, the pedestrian airbag technology is a grand example of how we work holistically with safety here at Volvo.
That's really neat.
So did you catch what he said about how it also works with the pedestrian detection, the auto brake? So they're using the automated braking system we talked about yesterday to stop the car. But if we can't stop it and we still hit you, we want to cushion you. And you see how it pops the hood up at an angle, and then the airbag comes out to protect your head from the windshield. So, and yeah, so Volvo, obviously they're manufacturing in Australia, but they sell regionally to all of Asia. And that's why I said that's where that market is for them. And I haven't seen it in this country yet. But obviously, yeah, I know it's made its way to Europe right now. Last time I checked, because when I first read it, pedestrian airbag, what the heck's that? I had to look it up and research it. I didn't know about it. So happy I showed you a video, Mary Lou.
Yes, very good. Thank you very much.
I think
I
that
think
would
it's
be good
probably
for states like New York, right? Because they have a lot
Right.
of pedestrians.
well, I
Yeah.
think we'll probably actually see that technology used a lot more when vehicles become more autonomous,
Yes.
because they won't have as much ability for somebody jumping out to see that a person might. They're going to put that in for liability reasons to protect that person that does get hit.
Right. So even though we have the automated braking, we have the sensors that can tell you jumped out, and you heard what he also said, a person-like object, right? So they're kind of looking at the legs. It looks like a person, but it could be a dog, could be a deer, could be, but they're kind of looking at this type of thing compared to a stationary object. And you also saw the narrow speed range. It's really designed for in the city. But I agree. We know we have these accidents. We have them around schools, right? I mean, people get hit around schools. There's a lot of things that we have the technology to do that we choose not to. And it normally comes down to cost versus benefit. Someone has decided that spending the money is not worth saving X number of lives. Is that 1 life a year or 100 lives a year or 1,000 lives a year in the US market? But whatever that number is, it's not over a tipping point where we've seen action.
Yeah, but we should also think that one life really matters.
Right. Well, we keep hearing that, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to always be the case. We have the technology today to eliminate speeding, to eliminate people going fast in school zones. All these things that are safety as people speeding on city streets. We have that technology built into almost every car today already. And yet we don't turn it on. We're down to programming. We already have the hard parts in place.
How does that work, Mr. Brian? Your car automatically stops at a certain speed?
Yeah, well, let's think about it. We have GPS, right? So I know what road you're on. We know what the speed limit for that road is, and we know if there's a school there. We control the gas with a computer, the throttle. We control the brakes with a computer. Why can't we keep you at 25 miles or under anytime you're in a school zone? All the pieces are there. The only thing that's missing is the programming.
Yeah. Is it only when you have GPS then, right?
Right, but see, almost all cars have a GPS chip. You may not have the GPS features.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you may not enjoy GPS, but your car probably has it.
Oh yeah, I like GPS. It helps a lot.
It does. So, but that's my point, is that we have technology to save lives. And I think that nationally, traffic accidents, and you guys can fact check me on this, but I think it's somewhere around 30 to 36,000 people a year are killed in traffic accidents.
Nationally or statewide?
Nationally.
Nationally. That's not a very high number if you think about the population.
No, it's the same. It's almost the same number of people that are killed by firearms every year, by guns.
Oh, well, that's still
And the flip side of that is something like 2/3 of gun deaths are suicides. But you hear a lot about gun control and people that are killed by guns matter, which statistically, death by gun from another person is almost 1/3 of the number of people that are killed in car accidents. But you don't hear anything about trying to reduce the number of people that are killed in car accidents. It's just accepted as people die in car accidents.
it's kind of sad. I think we need like lobbyists.
Yes. You know, and like I said, I don't have a problem with having the conversation, but let's at least have an honest conversation and look at everything. If it's about lives, let's talk about lives. If it's about, you don't want me to drive fast, or you don't want me to have a gun, or you don't want me to bungee jump, or you don't want me to do whatever, that's a different conversation. But if it's about lives, let's look at all lives. Let's look at everything.
I'm with you on that.
So again, I'm just a dumb guy that fixes cars, but I just like asking questions.
Don't agree with that, Mr. Brian.
Like, so when we talk about the purpose of the SRS system, vehicle safety systems are designed to protect occupants during accidents, can easily be classified as a primary passive safety system and a secondary active safety system. So passive meaning you don't need to do anything, active means you do. Primary safety systems are ready to operate in an accident, include bumper bars, body panels, seat belts, crumple zones, collapsible steering columns. So this is the stuff that's engineered into the vehicle as part of our Malibu being safer. Secondary safety system has to be activated to work and is only necessary in severe accidents. Two most common types of secondary safety systems are airbags and what are called seatbelt pretensioners. And what seatbelt pretensioners do is they pull you back in your seat so that when the airbag deploys, you're not right on top of it. You know, like some people drive and they're like right on top of the steering wheel. Well, I don't want the airbag to go off when you're right on top of the steering wheel. I want you back in your seat before we deploy the airbag. And it's also about controlling that movement. Also, depending on the sophistication of the vehicle, we may only use the pretensioner. So in other words, it's an accident and it's 10 miles an hour. Well, maybe we just tighten the seatbelt up on you and don't put an airbag in your face.
I have a question, Mr. Brian, please.
Yes.
What device they use to reset the SRS, the airbag? What model?
What do you mean? What do we use to reset it? Define reset.
After change the airbag, if they're blowing, after change the airbag, how to reset the?
You don't. If
don't.
the airbags are blown, that's why you
Okay.
have to replace the module, because you cannot reset the module. Failure to do that will normally mean when you put the new airbags in and you turn the key on, you just deployed all your new airbags, which is an expensive mistake.
Okay, thank you.
So there are exceptions to that. Some vehicle manufacturers do. But another reason why I'm a little bit ahead of modules here, another reason why is the airbag module is the module that normally has the quote unquote black box or flight recorder. So if you're in an accident, certain data is stored when the airbags deploy. Because you say people, oh, I was in a bad accident and my airbags didn't deploy. Why? Or more importantly, I'd have been better off if my airbags didn't deploy because, you know, they caused me injury. It also comes into, while stepping on the brake and the car wouldn't stop, things like that. So the data, just like an airplane, the data from a lot of these parameters is stored in the airbag module when it deploys the airbags, because that's what? An event. We know when that is. We know that you deploy the airbags. So I can look at what happened just before we deployed the airbags, what happened just after the airbags, and figure out, was your gas on the accelerator or the brake? Whereas, you know, what were you really doing? What's, you know, so we can really look at a lot of that information and figure out, did the system malfunction, or are you blaming us for the system malfunction when in reality it was a driver malfunction? When I had one of my repair shops, there was a donut shop across the street. over the course of time I had the shop, 2 different people drove their cars into the donut shop.
Okay.
They both were sure the car was the problem. The car was fine. They didn't have a license after that. They got confused and they put their foot on the gas instead of the brake. And since it didn't stop, they just kept pushing down faster and it went right into the donut shop.
Mr. Brian, I'm curious
Okay,
about the
thank you.
size. Oh, sorry. I'm curious about the size of that the black box. It's located within the airbag.
No, it's located usually, I'm going to get to it. It's located inside the airbag control module normally. And the airbag control modules are usually about this big. So they're not huge, this thick. They're not real big. And I'll show you, they're normally mounted in the center of the vehicle, usually between the driver and passenger up towards the center console. I mean, up towards the front console. They're normally mounted right in there. So they normally mount them very central on the vehicle. And they do that for a couple reasons. One is they want it to survive an accident. The other is they have what's called a yaw sensor in them. And that sensor measures the G-force. And so they want to put that in a pretty central location to measure that.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm remembering now. My memory is failing. I think we touched this in 507.
Okay, good.
Oh, it's failing though.
So the
Brian,
purpose of operation, well, I'm sorry, what, Sonny?
What's a collapsible steering column?
Okay, so collapsible steering column. Did you take the 507 class?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, because I say they normally cover it in there. So in the old days, pre-1967, the steering box, which is what allows us to turn the wheels back and forth, has a shaft that goes into it that the steering wheel is attached to. And that used to be one long shaft that went all the way into the passenger compartment, and we just bolted the steering wheel on it, and I could turn the car back and forth. And what would happen is in an accident, that steering box would get pushed back, and it was like a harpoon going right into the driver. So what we've done and what was required in 1967 is we now build a steering column where it has one inside the other. So in the event of an impact, they slide inside the other and collapse instead of having this harpoon coming towards the driver. So up where the steering wheel stays in one place and where the steering gear box is mounted. And the piece in between is kind of like an extension tube that we can expand and contract, although most of them are designed to only contract once. But they are designed to expand and contract, and that allows them to move closer together without that steering wheel coming into the driver's body, basically. So do you follow me okay on that, Sonny?
Yep, thank you.
You bet. Good question. Like I always say, if I use a terminology you don't know, call me on it. Because I'm sure you're not the only person with that question. So the purpose and operation of the SRS, so you see now we've moved from airbags to SRS, another acronym, because we love acronyms. SRS stands for Supplemental Restraint System. So, which is our airbag. So a lot of times we'll see it as an SRS module, not an airbag module. So seat belts secure and restrain the occupant within the seat and vehicle cabin. Airbags provide a cushioning effect against inertia. So the goal of the airbag is not to blow back and keep you here. It is to blow back, and then as it deflates as you push into it, to control your movement. So the airbag deploys towards the occupant's approaching body, inflated rapidly by pressurized nitrogen gas. We have a couple different ways we can generate it. The most common way is actually through chemistry, and we actually make the gas on site. Some of the earlier systems use little gas canisters. We don't do that anymore.
Mr. Brian, okay, once the seat belt deploys, is it just a matter of seconds before it deflates?
Oh, the airbag? Yeah, it's going to expand and deflate very quickly. So it's going to expand in milliseconds. 20 to 50 milliseconds. And then it'll retract normally within a couple seconds. I mean, it's pretty quick. And that's for a couple reasons. One, if I just put this big air thing in front of you, now your face that's going 70 miles an hour that just got stopped is going to hit this hard thing of air. And so what we want is we want to cushion it because we don't want to create any more bruising or damage to you than we need to, but we want to control your movement. So it happens very quickly. And then after that, we need that airbag out of the way so you can get out of the car or we can get to you. Imagine if you're trying to get out of a car of an accident, there's all these bags around you, and you can't get through them. Like it being, restrained by a bunch of balloons made out of heavy fabric. So we want them to deploy very, very quickly so you can easily move them out of the way to get out of the car. And here they're talking about typically it takes no longer than about 300ths of a second. So 300 milliseconds to go from we want airbags to they're completely inflated. So that's pretty quick. Airbag is a strong counterforce to react against the inertia of the occupants, not designed to be comfortable, designed to minimize injury. And so there are a number of different types of airbags whose size and location are determined by the protection they offer. And we saw that with the names. So the common names we normally have is the drivers and passengers frontal airbag, the side airbags for the drivers and passengers, and side curtain airbags. And then your bolster airbag for driver and passenger, not all cars have. But that's kind of gives you the location. If it's a frontal airbag, it's in your face. If it's a side airbag, it's protecting your side. A curtain airbag goes over the windows. So we're now seeing airbags for rear passengers, where maybe we have an airbag mounted in the back of the driver's seat, in the back of the front passenger seat to what? Deploy to protect those. We might have airbags that come out of the center console towards the rear passengers to protect them or protect the center person in the rear. So we have a lot more airbags now, and depending on the force of the impact and the direction of the impact and how many people are sitting in seats determines which airbags are deployed.
So an airbag won't deploy if the seat is empty?
Normally not. However, depending on the severity of the crash, we may be concerned about your movement. For example, say you run into somebody and then you get T-boned on the driver's side. And even though there's no passenger, the passenger side airbag and the passenger frontal airbag may deploy because it's concerned about movement or it's concerned about keeping debris away from you at the point of impact. So occasionally you will see airbags deploy when there's not someone there. Also, people that drive with stuff in their passenger seat are much likely to have an airbag deploy on the passenger side than people that don't have stuff over there because it's about weight. And if we have a certain amount of weight, we're going to deploy an airbag. So some people, work out of their cars, their office, and they got a file or a little desktop or something that they seatbelt into the passenger side. Well, that's fine, but understand in an accident, that airbag will deploy because the computer thinks there's someone there.
Yeah. So, I have another question. I kind of forgot it.
You sure?
Wait, let me
Well,
think.
if you think about it, ask me because they're always good questions. So.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Okay.
So the text says that the airbags won't feel like a nice pillow. Has anyone experienced the deployment of an airbag to kind of say, how it really feels? Like what kind of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was driving to work one morning and I got rear-ended at a stop sign by someone who didn't stop because they were texting at 50 miles an hour and pushed my Corolla into the truck in front of it. So it deployed a lot of airbags, side curtain airbags, everything. I mean, because we got just sandwiched in this little Corolla. And I really wasn't sore from the airbags at all. I couldn't tell you what they felt like because it happened so fast. What I can tell you is, according to my wife, I was out for about 2 minutes.
Oh,
because
you
I was
passed
on the
out?
I was on the phone with her, and I said, he's not going to, and then all she heard is the bang. And she said it was about 2 minutes before she could hear me on the phone again. And
Does it mean you passed out?
I think I was knocked out
Oh, okay.
by the airbags because I have no memory of that. Next thing I knew, there was someone outside my car on my side trying to get my attention. So they obviously had time to get out of their car and come to my car and all that stuff. So I think it knocked me out for a minute or two. But I mean, I didn't have raccoon eyes like I was in a fight. I didn't have a bloody nose. I didn't have any of that. The accident was enough force. I had a Bluetooth in my ear and it ended up in the passenger side floorboard. So it obviously came off, but that doesn't take that much. But I lost about 2 minutes there.
And what was your speed then?
I was not moving.
Oh, you weren't moving. Oh, okay.
No, the person behind me was doing about 55.
Oh.
Never hit the brakes.
Okay, so it wasn't a nice pillow. You don't remember.
I remember, but I didn't get bruised by it. So,
Ryan,
you know, they're definitely not firm because they're able to let air escape, so they have holes in them. So, you know, we're filling it up with air or nitrogen, but at the same token, it's coming out very quickly. So we're not getting to anything that's hard. You know, it's still going to be able to be pushed out. Just the holes control how quickly it's pushed out.
Question, Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
I have a friend, they were driving a Volvo and then they have a big accident. The airbag blew in his face and she was having like bruises. She said, I don't know what happened to me, she said, because the airbag just broke because of the impact. But then some of the bruises was in the seat belt, you know, put your seat belt. But her face was, she was so scared that, you know, the bruises, but it was, I don't know what that, maybe because of the oxygen, but nitrogen, is it like that?
No, it's not uncommon for people to get bruised from airbags. And I'm guessing your friend might be a little older than me. And as we get older, we do bruise easier. So, you know, I was in this accident 9 years ago. So, you know, that's why I have a Camry and not a Corolla now, because my wife let me know I was getting a bigger car.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, so bruising is uncommon. The airbag recall, you know, a lot of people have had to take their cars in and get new airbags put in.
Yeah.
The Takata, I think it was, you know, 17 million cars or something like that. That was because people were getting burned by the igniter in the airbag from the chemical reaction, or the pieces of the igniter were coming towards them like shrapnel and they were getting cut. And of course they got sued, so big settlement. If I step back and think a minute though, weren't they still better off with the airbag, even with the injuries they might have gotten from the airbag, than if they were in a 59 Bel Air?
Yeah, you can take it like, so two scenarios. Like if you jump in a big pillow, you won't feel a thing. You know, it's gonna be nice and soft. But if somebody throw a pillow at you, that's a different story, and you might end up having a bruise on your face.
Right.
That's pretty much how the airbag goes. I mean, if you are like kind of like away from the airbag when it deploys, you won't feel it as much as if you're going against the airbag. You feel the
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy, Mr. Alberto. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Bryan, if we're working around the steering column, is it a good idea to somehow disable the airbags? And if so, is that just pulling a fuse someplace?
Yes and yes. Manufacturers normally require you to disable the airbag system before working on the airbag or disconnecting anything or taking the steering column apart. Because the most common place for an airbag is the center of the steering wheel. So some manufacturers have you just pull the fuse. Other manufacturers have you disconnect the battery. After you do either one of those things, you need to wait about 10 minutes for the system to discharge. What I can tell you, now here's the bad side of me. I'm going to be a bad instructor now. What I can tell you is I have disconnected hundreds of airbags without disabling anything. Because of how they're designed, they use a shorting bar, and disconnecting an airbag doesn't deploy an airbag. But again, they're erring on the side of caution. So could it happen? It could. Never seen it. I've seen plenty of people accidentally deploy airbags, normally from not following procedures when they put new airbags in and reinitialize the system. But you know, routinely in the shop, I'm pulling airbags off. I'm not disconnecting any power.
Okay, so my friend who took your class probably 2 semesters ago said that you had like an exercise where you put the airbag back in. Is that true?
Yep.
Of course.
Yeah, I have one that we do on campus where I have the students take an airbag out, show it to me, and put an airbag back in. And I do that so people get over their fear of airbags.
Ah, okay.
Because I'd never have people do something that I thought might injure them or might be unsafe. And so that's why I have that exercise and walk through. And I always have people disconnect the power when they do it and follow all the procedures, because we're a school and we should be following procedures. And the procedures are always to keep us the safest. At the same token, I'm going to be honest with you with my bad habits and things that we do in industry that don't follow procedure that we seem to magically get away with and never cause us a problem.
I think that would have been a good exercise to experience.
Yeah, it is. People like it. I have a lot of labs like that. I'm looking forward to one day getting back on campus and be able to do that stuff again, because it is fun. And I think there's a lot of value to the discovery of pulling things off and put it in your hand and seeing that, you know, it's not as mysterious as we think.
I was in the upholstery class one semester, and I actually did see that demonstration. We went out to look at it. I don't know who told us, hey, they're doing this demonstration on airbags. So we all went out and saw that.
Yeah, airbags are always popular.
So that means that we missed that chance.
I think so, because we're not going to be back on campus during this class, unfortunately. Yeah, Alberto, you had a question.
Well, actually, now I have 2 questions. No, it's because you mentioned about like we're going to be online. So I actually started the class with Mr. Greg last night, and he mentioned that the welding class is already back on campus, but I think they're dealing with the 6 feet apart, and they don't know how to, you know, handle that, because he said, you know, if I want to show you guys a part of the engine or something like that, I mean, it's going to be hard, you know, for everybody to be 60 feet apart and, you know, try to show you what I'm doing.
Right. So, and the other issue with the current guidelines is the labor required. So when they did welding, they came on for a couple of weeks last fall. I think it was fall. And they had more instructors and staff than they had students in order to follow all the college's protocols. So they had like 10 people for 6 students. I mean, it was just all hands on deck, extremely labor intensive, and not practical, obviously, for a big class, especially here where in Ottawa, we normally work as teams. I have advocated for even like the electrical, where I have 20 different trainers. Can I run 2 groups of 20 people through and we can do some hands-on stuff, all that. And I'm just not getting anywhere. And a lot of it's just the procedures. I'm hoping with the vaccine and with hopefully, I think things will settle down and there's a lot of new money available and push for people coming back to school. Hopefully we'll see that change by this summer and be able to get back on. That's also where I know the college allows people to repeat the class if they took it online, which normally they can't. If they get a certificate, they normally can't repeat it. And they're allowing them to do that. I don't know how that affects VA or VA benefits. I have no idea. You'd have to ask Crystal. But I know that from a college going up to the state, because normally the state doesn't allow us to do this. It said anyone who takes the class online during COVID can repeat it on campus, even if they get an A, even if they get a certificate, anything else, to get that hands-on side component, that in-person component. So I know that that is available, but that's something that we're still working on. I mean, I've got a lot of new equipment, I've got a lot of stuff, and then part of it is space. How do we space people out? My classroom was originally designed for 24 students, and I normally have over 40 in it. So even at 24 students, people aren't 6 feet apart. So if we want that distancing, where's a classroom that I can actually have my students in? We don't have one in Autumn. So there's a lot of things that I think they're going to have to adjust some of the guidelines. And I don't think that's going to happen until after we see the vaccine out and see some of these other things and the numbers go down and they allow us to be less than 6 feet apart with less than 3 masks.
So, Mr. Brian, maybe when we're back on campus and you have the next class or whenever next year, maybe you can let us know when you're doing that drill on the airbag, and then we can come and participate or sit in.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing to do that, because I will forget, is email me and remind me.
Oh, okay. Will do.
I mean, you guys got my email. I mean, I have students from several years ago still email me. So that's not a problem. I love sharing. That's why I do this. This is my retirement job. So
do they email you for problem solving and diagnosis?
Yeah, people do that. People do that also. And sometimes I'm more help than I am others, but absolutely.
All right. I'm writing my email now.
Yeah.
Mr. Brian?
Yes.
Now, but I'm going to my second question now. So on these airbag modules, so let's say only the front, so you have, well, let's go back to the Malibu again. Let's say only the, you're driving by yourself and the driver's side airbag goes off. Does that module is still gonna be able to deploy the other airbags around you after that, or you have to replace the module because it's not good anymore?
Depends on the manufacturer, whether there's a reset. Most of the time you have to replace the entire module.
Okay, but it's not going to be now on the second question. Is it going to be like, let's say you deploy that airbag and maybe like 5 minutes later another car comes and T-bone you? Does that module is going to be able to deploy the other airbags, or it's going to be completely disabled?
Potentially it could, and I don't know is the best answer I can give you. It's too hypothetical, and I don't know 100% either way.
Okay, it's just like I've been, asking to myself if what is, if it is like a program that is inside the module, or is it some sort of like a circuit that it pretty much deploys and it's no longer functioning?
Well, it is a program inside the module and is able to see from what direction you're hit, and based on the direction you're hit and passengers in the car, it's going to determine which airbags to deploy. So it's certainly, if it was 30 seconds later or a minute later, I'd say, yeah, most likely it's going to deploy another airbag if you're hit another direction or circumstances change, and that has happened. I don't know how long of a time before it goes dormant and it won't deploy something. But yeah, there are certainly many times, especially in these pileup accidents, where you run into somebody and 20 seconds later, the car behind you runs into you. You look at these big accidents in fog and in snow and things like that, these big freeway pileups. So there's definitely times where you have a delay between events. I would certainly think that manufacturers have a certain amount programmed in where we might deploy different things based on direction of impact, even if there's a slight time delay, as long as the key hasn't been cycled off.
So it's most like a circuit that it will remain on in the module. Like if you install a brand new airbag, most likely it's going to be off too. It's going to go off too, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm following the question. So if
based on what you mentioned before, I think one of the students make a comment about if you put a brand new airbag on the car, you mentioned that you have to replace the module. So I wonder if that circuit is still on to make the new airbag to go off again.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the little transistor inside the airbag module, once it trips to deployed, they tend to stay in that position. Again, they're not all that way. Some automatically reset and you can do that stuff. But many of them, the reason why the manufacturers want you to replace that module is that little switch inside the computer went from no airbag to we want to see the airbag, and it just stays there. It's a one-time switch. So if I plug another airbag in and hook up the battery, the new airbag is going to deploy.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
You bet.
Brian, question.
Yes.
The knee airbags, are they for the cars only? Or do they have it in the trucks?
They might have it in the trucks also.
Oh, okay.
You know, the newer the vehicle, the more airbags we get.
Okay, thank you.
Now, truck safety is different than passenger car safety. There's a lower standard for trucks than there is for passenger cars. So they
Why
may
is that?
What's that?
Why is that? I mean, it's still a vehicle and you still have passengers in it. So why is
Yeah,
there?
but trucks are seen as commercial. So trucks have looser environmental standards for emissions and have looser safety standards.
Thank you.
So for example, a truck, you know, it may have changed recently, but up until at least 10 years ago, trucks did not have to have energy absorbing bumpers. They could still have a steel bumper sticking out there. Or you could buy a truck. I remember I'm going back 20 years ago, you could still buy a truck without a rear bumper, where you can't do that on a passenger car. So, you know, so I don't know what the current stuff is, but they are different, both in emissions. Trucks are allowed to pollute more, and in safety. They're not held to the same safety standards, because the primary purpose of a truck is to haul goods, where the primary purpose of a passenger car is to move people. Now, here's where things get interesting. My wife's Hemi Magnum, her 2005 station wagon, is a truck. It's registered or licensed as far as from a manufacturing standpoint as a truck. A Honda CRV, a Lexus RX 300 is a passenger car. But a couple of years later, when they came out with the Lexus RX 330, it was a truck. Or I drive that backwards. No, I think that's correct. But you look at them, there's almost no difference. So why is one a passenger car and one a truck? Well, because that's how the manufacturers got it approved by the EPA and through all the regulatory agencies. So it could be because of safety, or it could be because of emissions. Remember, as a truck, I'm allowed to pollute more. Plus, my corporate average fuel economy for trucks doesn't have to be as high as my corporate average fuel economy for passenger cars. So the manufacturers really play with these rules. It's not about what does it look like. It's about what did they get it approved as.
But what about from a passenger's point of view? Is it better for a car to be labeled or categorized as truck or?
No, as a car.
A
Cars
car.
are safer.
Okay.
But that's something we don't think about. I mean, I own trucks. I have more trucks than I have anything else. But it's a different safety category when you look at the manufacturer is building the vehicle and getting the vehicle certified for sale.
How about the SUVs? Are they mostly cars?
They're, hit and miss. Some are trucks, some are cars. And some, it depends on what year. Oh, this year it's a passenger car. Oh, next year they redesigned the body a little bit and now it's a truck, or vice versa. Like the Subaru Forester. Some years the Forester is a passenger car. Some years the Forester is a truck.
So when you're buying a vehicle like an SUV, do you want to ask the dealer if it's a truck?
No, because the guy probably won't know, or he'll lie to you. What you do is you pop the hood and you read the emission control label.
Oh.
The Vecchi label. You remember the Vecchi label homework?
Yeah, the very beginning.
Right. And it says whether it's certified as a passenger car or a truck or what it's certified as.
Oh, that's right. How easy we forget, huh?
Yeah. I try to show you guys all these neat tricks. Just like figuring out whether your Toyota is made in, Mexico, Kentucky, or Japan, you can look at the first digit of the VIN, right? If it's a J, it's made in Japan. 1 or 4 is made in North America. I mean, so you can quickly figure out, what am I buying?
I think we're just learning many new things, so we tend to forget the older ones. No excuse.
Well, I did tell you that I'm pretty good at getting about 10 gallons of information into a 5-gallon bucket in this class.
It's exploding now.
Yep, it does that. So,
Mr. Parent, for insurance purposes, would insurance know whether it's classified as a truck or a car? Does it matter?
Absolutely. And that all comes into the insurance rates you pay on things. So it's usually not even something that's discussed. It's just, here's your price for the car. But in their, algorithm and in their stuff that they are calculating out, they know that stuff.
Okay.
So that's also, if you're down looking at 2 different SUVs or 2 different things from 2 different manufacturers, it might be worth a call to the insurance company. Do these both cost the same to insure? Is one more or less? Those are all good questions to ask. Because there can be a big difference in insurance on cars that seem to do the same thing and look the same, but yet one's more expensive to insure. Maybe because it's stolen more, maybe because there's more claims on it, maybe the claims on it are more expensive. There's all kinds of factors that go into that. All I know is that the insurance company gets plenty of money out of me every year. I don't know if anyone's ever looked at the lifetime money spent with an insurance company. Because I've been with the same company since the 1980s. So it's pretty staggering when I pull up the amount that I've spent since the 1980s on insurance.
How many cars do you have, Mr. Brian?
What's that?
How many cars do you have?
Oh, what do I have? I have that are insured and on the road right now. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right now. I have 6 total, but one's not registered right now. One's non-opt. So, yeah, that's right. I got 2 there, 1 there. Yeah, so I only have 5 right now.
And the one that you're not using, do you still have to insure that one or no? Not really.
No, the one I'm not using is not insured. I have a non-op on it, and that's my off-road Jeep.
Well, you have 6. I don't feel bad anymore because I have 2 for me. I have a Resign and I have a 4Runner that I just got, and sometimes I think to myself, I'm like, is it okay to have 2 cars?
Yeah.
But yeah. So now I don't feel that bad anymore.
Yeah, and see, my new car I've had for 9 years now. So I tend to keep stuff a long time.
Yeah, if they're reliable, it's pretty good to keep them. Like in my case, I'm so happy with my Resign. I don't think I'm gonna change that one. Well,
yeah,
I haven't even thought about it. So.
Yeah, I still have the pickup truck I bought in 1989.
Very reliable. Is it the Jeep, the one that you have in the video with the charging system?
Oh, that's my black Jeep. I've had that since 98.
Oh, those are pretty good.
Yeah. So like I said, I normally get what I want and keep it forever. Every time I think I want something new, I see how much they cost, and then I like my old one even better. So, yeah. What's that?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's try to get through. So the airbags and pretensioners, we already talked about side impacts, side curtains, knee airbags or bolster airbags. If we're pulling codes for airbags, the one thing we really got to be careful of when we read the code description, it may say, oh, it's a passenger side airbag. Or are we talking the passenger side airbag that's in the face, the front one, or the passenger's side airbag that is next to them? And because the code descriptions are not clear. So, and I've certainly gone the wrong direction more than once diagnosing because I skipped the step of going to the flow chart and going and reading and figured out exactly which airbag is setting the code. So here we can see, I have a driver's side airbag. Here's a passenger side airbag. Those are both frontal airbags. If you notice hanging off here, this is yellow. Airbag wiring is yellow. So this bright yellow lets you know that's airbag. So it's not just the wire that's yellow, it's the covering for all the wires is this bright yellow. The connectors are this bright yellow. This is letting you know, hey, this is an airbag system. Don't stick these with a power probe. Don't stick them with a test light. Don't do any of these things because you could deploy the airbag because you may cause it to deploy. So you never want to do that. See over here, this is a side airbag. So you can see where this mounts in the seat and it has a bag right here at the end that blows through the upholstery. And then here's a knee airbag right here that's showing underneath. The steering column would be right here. Steering wheel is up, you know, from that. So the steering column has been removed. You can see the airbag right there. If I take an airbag off, like here we have this seat airbag right here, we always want to store them face up. The reason being is if for some reason the airbag goes off when it's on the bench, if it's face up, it's going to push the airbag into the bench. If it's face down and it goes off, now I have a projectile and it's going to go into the air. So we always want to store them this way and hold this part away from you, except for when you're installing them. Many times when you're installing them on a steering wheel, and the reason why they want you to disconnect the power is when you're installing a steering wheel, you're actually hugging the steering wheel, getting to the bolts behind it, and the airbag's right in your chest. So in case you do something wrong, in case something is not been replaced, it should have been replaced, so that new airbag triggers. That's why they want the power off when you connect everything, is because they want to make sure that we don't have an issue. So if I'm working on a car that's been in an accident, the airbags have been deployed, I have the battery disconnected. I'm taking no chances. I'm servicing everything, doing everything what I'm supposed to do. And I am outside the car when I hook up the battery because things can happen. I take that very, very seriously. On the other hand, if I am just taking a steering wheel off or replacing a turn signal switch or something like that, I'm pretty casual about it because there's nothing that's going to tell that computer to deploy the airbag. So I kind of want to qualify that. So here we can see some different parts of the airbag assembly. And inside here, we have a little part called a squib, S-Q-U-I-B. If I'm working on European cars and their documentation call the entire airbag a squib. So your codes will be for a squib. Your diagnosis will be for a squib. So in European speak, a squib means an airbag. When in reality, we can see with this picture, it's just a small part of the airbag. It's the electronic part that actually ignites or tells the igniter to ignite and then generates gas with the pellets and expands the bag. They talk about mechanically activated systems use inertia to remove a pin. They have not done that since the early 70s. Ford made 200, I think it was, vehicles in the early 70s with airbags and put them on the road to see the impact of having airbags on accidents. And they were mechanical airbags because in the early 70s, we didn't have computers to do that with. So I don't know why the book even brought that in here. No one does that on a modern vehicle, but that's where that comes from. That's what happens when you have old people writing books, I guess. So if I'm in a collision, electrical current triggers the squib. The squib, in that case, will cause the gas pellets to ignite and generates a tremendous amount of heat. So that's one of the issues we had with the Takata recall was heat being generated and people getting burned. Mechanically deployed airbags use a steel ball to a firing pin into the squib. They don't do that. The reason why they don't do that is we want the computer to control it. And I hear some squeaking going on. Oh, a little squeaky.
What happened to your hair, baby? What happened to your hair?
Someone needs to be muted.
What happened to your hair?
So deployment process is identical to electric truck. So here, oops, got it. That's that. So here we can see there's a fracture line on the airbag where rupture if deployed. So one of the issues that manufacturers have had on dashes and even steering wheels is that where that is designed to split to allow the airbag to come out, the dash cracks. And so Toyota was taking care of those for at least 13 years after they built the cars. There's a customer service that had a campaign on it, where if you had a crack in your dash, they were giving you a free dash because their manufacturing process wasn't perfect. Ford and Mercedes have also had similar issues. Here's the large vent holes I was talking about in the airbag so that it quickly deflates.
Mr. Brian, go back one second. Are we saying that Chevy also had some program that they will replace a cracked dash?
I don't know if Chevy did. I know that Mercedes and Ford had issues, and Toyota had a program where they were replacing dashes that are cracked at the airbag due to a manufacturing defect. So if you're, if you're thinking about your 95, I'm sure it's long since out. But they, Toyota did my mother-in-law's on it when her car was 13 years old.
Thanks. I was thinking about that.
I knew you were.
That picture of the airbag, that's exactly the one that looks like I have with the with the cut in the middle.
Yeah, and as long as that fracture is there, if that split completely open or something like that, then it would be defective. GM didn't really have a problem with those, but most of what we saw was passenger side dashes, and where they put them underneath the dash instead of a drop in, and some cracking going on there. And you can see a deployed pedestrian airbag here. You guys have all seen those now.
Thank you.
You bet. And the airbag made of nylon folded into the front face of the assembly. Newer airbags use a more slippery fabric or silicone to allow the airbag to inflate without binding. The other thing they're looking for is things that are softer to put your face into. So the original airbags were a little harsh, kind of like sleeping on a burlap pillow. And so they want to kind of soften that a little bit to cut down on abrasions or bruising. So we talked about the pedestrian airbag in the case of any, okay, got that. So our pretensioners, to tighten the seatbelt in a severe frontal accident, pretensioners are 3 different types: electric, mechanical, and pyrotechnic. Pyrotechnic ones are used largely on European vehicles, where we usually actually use an explosive charge to tighten the seatbelt. Needless to say, you only do that once. Just like airbags, these pretensioners also will set a code if the resistance in the circuit's not correct. So we often diagnose and replace these even when they're not deployed. And then we get the fun of putting them in a vise and deploying them. And boy, do they make noise, and that's kind of fun. Ballistic pretensioner relies on explosive charge that is detonated electronically by an actuator. Mechanical systems rely on inertia or sensing a mass. So that goes back to the 1970s, that technology. And this is just like the seatbelt on your car. If you pull it out slowly, it'll come out. But if you pull it out really quick, it'll kind of try to lock up on you. That is that mechanical seatbelt that we've had around forever. Seatbelts cannot be reused once they have once the pretensioner has gone off, if it's an electric or an explosive one normally, especially the explosive ones. And they actually want you to replace the whole seatbelt.
Mr. Brian,
Yes.
are these pretensioners like standard in cars?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the type you have varies. So here is an electric motor style, which I have not worked on or had to replace. The other one with the gas generator that has an explosive charge there on the left, I have replaced a ton of those from just going bad. We use those on European cars. The most common one we have is just uses centrifugal force and momentum. And we've used those since the 70s. And that's where if you pull the seatbelt out too fast, it stops. But if you pull it out slowly, it moves really easy. And those are traditional mechanical. And like I said, those have been around since the 1970s.
So if you have that type, that's a pretensioner belt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so when you pull it quickly, then it locks up.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And the good news for you is those generally last the life of the car. There's no real electronics in them. The only electronics in the system is normally in the buckle where you plug it in, and it's just a simple switch. And it says I'm connected or not connected. And Honda did have some trouble with their seatbelt buckles, and they were warranting them for life for quite a while. Because Honda had so many air problems with their seatbelts, they were warranting them for life, where other manufacturers normally make you buy them after 100,000 miles or so. So on any, what's that?
Sorry, what about the cars? I know we had the Nissan before that when you sit in the, passenger or driver, is it driver only? The belt automatically, the harness, the front one automatically locks you up.
Yep.
Does that have pretensioner with it?
Yep, that's still going to have a pretensioner built into it. And those were very, very popular in the 80s and into the early 90s, of that seatbelt that tries to strangle you when you get in the car.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a lot of fun when you reach in a car with a door closed and turn the key on.
Yeah.
And it comes back and it pulls you, and you're trying to reach so you can turn off the key before it strangles you. So they're a lot of fun.
I have another question though, because I remember reading in the CDX text about positioning your hands before an accident or something, before the airbag deploys, that it was, you have to have them 10 and 2 and not 9 and 3 or something. And
yeah, you really always want your hands more, at the 10 and 2. 9 and 3 is still not a problem. The issue we have is really, you don't want to be having your hands across the airbag when it deploys or wrapped through the wheel. I wouldn't worry about 9 and 3 or 10 and 2. And the reality is, most of the time when we get in an accident where airbags are deployed, we don't know we're getting in one anyways.
Yeah. And you don't know where your hands are all the time, right?
But yeah, I mean, the airbag's coming out of the center. So you just don't want to have your arms around the center. Some people drive just holding on the center and their thumbs are on top of the airbag. Probably not a good call. Another thing we have is rip stitching in some newer cars. So these are seat belts that after the pretensioner pulls it tight, it has thread where we kind of have these loops in the seat belt, and they're designed to tear, allowing you to move forward towards the airbag, but controlling your rate of movement. That way you don't get as much bruising across your chest. And obviously in an accident, these seat belts are a throwaway. So you see where we quickly start adding a lot of money to repairing one of these cars correctly once it's been in an accident. Because there's all these little things, and it's a seatbelt. Okay, that's $150, and it's this, and that's $300, and it adds up. Then you got to pay the labor to put it all in. So you can see where expensive repairing these newer cars can get extremely expensive. So our system is going to have crash sensors installed in various parts of the vehicle. Some manufacturers also put sensors in the control module, not the PCM. They're in the airbag control module. Side impact sensors are located in the door sills or B-pillar or by the strut tower. So sometimes changing struts, you have to be careful because the airbag sensor is right there. You have to remove it before you can replace the strut, or you might damage the sensor, causing a deployment. The airbag module deploys the relevant bag depending on information from the sensors. If a collision is from the front, the driver and passenger airbags will deploy. If the collision is from the side, the sensors determine whether the seat-mounted airbag or side curtains for one side of the vehicle will deploy. Do they both deploy? Do we want the front sensors also? Not all systems work the same way. Some are real simple. You get an accident, we're just going to give you everything. right? Dumber computer, not as much software. We're just going to deploy all the bags. Hey, we saved the person's life. We're good. Other systems are much more intelligent. They're only going to deploy the bags that are needed. So different systems will operate differently. Again, with more refined designs, the passenger airbag deploys only when there's an occupant in the seat. We can get to the next level, and now we're going to deploy the airbags differently based on how much the occupant weighs. So early systems only looked as, is there someone there or is there not someone there? Actually, the early systems were, is the seatbelt buckled or not buckled? If it's buckled, there's someone there. If it's not buckled, no one's there. Then we moved into, okay, I know someone's there because there's weight on the seat. How much does the person weigh? And based on controlling the weight of that person, I'm going to use a strategy on how I want to deploy and when I want to deploy my airbag. As things evolved, we actually started putting weight sensors on driver's seats. It used to be, why do we need to know if the driver's there? The car wouldn't be moving without a driver. Why waste money on sensors? But as we refine the system now, depending on your weight, so for example, you weigh 100 pounds and you get in an accident, maybe we're not going to deploy the airbag, but just tension the seatbelt. Someone who weighs 200 pounds and gets in the same accident at the same speed, we're going to deploy the pre-tension on the seatbelt and the airbag. Why? Because there's twice as much inertial energy that we have to control. So even though we've had airbags since the 80s, how they work is really evolved and continuing to evolve. So here's an airbag module. You see the yellow connector? Talks about a staffing sensor located inside the module. Staffing sensor basically is we can deploy or not deploy. This is normally, if I had a rear wheel drive, I'd have that center hump in the middle of the floorboard, and even front wheel drives have it for the exhaust. So many times these are mounted on that center hub right up underneath the front console or underneath the dash there. So that's where this one was or is. And this is a module just like any other module. So when we get into section 5 or module 5, we'll be talking about modules and networks and all that things. This module is no different. It works with inputs and it works with outputs. The output here is the seatbelt pretensioners of the airbags. The inputs are how fast is the car going? Which crash sensors went off, right? You know, I mean, it's looking for information to make a decision, just like every one of you are. When you walk outside, is it warm or is it cold? Do I need different shoes on? Do I need a jacket on? Do I need to take an umbrella? Right? We're basing that on our inputs that we see between what we look, what we feel. Computers no different. And so again, any of the SRS related devices are deployed for any reason. Most manufacturers require all the deployed devices be replaced, including the modules, the sensors, everything. So this is why you do this all power off. The other thing we normally do is instead of plugging the airbags in, we plug substitute loads in. We have resistors that we plug into where the airbags go, and then we power the system up. Make sure it doesn't try to deploy any of my resistors that I put there. Make sure everything's working good. Once we know everything's working good, we power the system down, plug the actual airbags in, and then give it back to the customer. So kind of some neat stuff. I do not have an airbag here at the house to show you. Normally I have one in the classroom. Tomorrow we're going to get into smart airbag technology and talk a little bit more about the technology we're using in these systems. And then we should be pretty well done with this module tomorrow. And I'll open up module 5 and we'll be getting into networking and sensors and actuators, which is really neat. And it gives us a chance to combine kind of the thought process in module 4, which is what we've been discussing, and how things work with how computers actually make it work and share information, which also pulls in that electrical component we spent the first couple of weeks on. So the next module, module 5 in Canvas, is where we really kind of start combining all the pieces to make these systems work. And then we use that methodology through the rest of the class. So it is kind of neat when we see how things really start connecting and working, because it takes all those pieces. It takes the concept. This is what I want to do. I want to turn on an airbag in someone's face when they rear end somebody. Great. We can understand that. We can talk about when we want it to happen, right? That's that brainstorming. So the next thing is, how are we going to do that? What kind of sensors? Where do I need to get information from? How am I going to get that information? And then the last piece is electrically, how do I transmit that information? And so we'll get into that. And I may even play my hot dog video for you guys tomorrow.
Hot dog video?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Mr. Brian, when will our Canvas modules be updated? Because we're still seeing the missing and homework. It's kind of confusing, so I'm not.
The missing, I can't do anything about. I apologize. If you have a score and you have points, it's not missing. You turned it in. If you have a 0 there, then it's really missing. But because of how Canvas works, they have still not made a way that I can get rid of people's missing assignments. And if you turn it in, then it gets rid of the grade you already have for the assignment. So it's one of the frustrating things I deal with when we have classes that go through more than one semester, which is almost every time. And it doesn't mess up the points in the grade book, but boy, it sure makes it look ugly with all that red.
Yes, it does. So it's gonna be like that for the rest of the semester?
Gonna be like that. I emailed the people that handle it this time to see if there's a fix. Instead of a fix, I got directions on how to move grades, which apparently I'm able to do. And then I said, no, that's not the question. Here's the question. It's been 2 weeks and I haven't gotten an answer.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I'm talking over their head or something. I don't know.
Okay.
I can only ask the question so many different ways. And when I, the third or fourth time I asked the question and now they just stopped talking to me, apparently I'm just difficult. So I'll wait a little while and ask the question again.
Because the discussion portion, the discussion module, if you may,
Right.
it only shows the newer.
Right, it does. And that's really unfortunate. So it's a lot less things. That's one reason why I haven't graded the discussions, is to give people a chance to post and reply and do some stuff. And that's also why I didn't do the discussion for this module until we cycled, because I didn't want to have an assignment due. I didn't want you guys starting on a discussion assignment and then ending it in a second module, in a separate second Canvas where half the discussions are gone. And that's why I held off opening up the discussion for module 4 until we switched Canvases, because again, that's some of the problems that because Canvas is designed around the credit side where everything is locked into a semester, and they have a real hard time with continuing ed where we're constantly cycling on the days. But we've come a long way. I got to say that, because when I started working for the college 3 years ago, we used to use a program called Blackboard, which is similar to Canvas. And when I got my first class, got my assignment, I got a new job, which was terrifying because I quit the job I'd had forever. And something new I'd never done. And I said, hey, I want Blackboard for my students because I like the online component of being able to post up my PowerPoints or, different things as a resource for my students. And the first answer I got was, well, we don't use that in continuing ed. It's not available. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. We're the same college district. We use it in our credit colleges. I know we have it. I want it. And it took permission all the way up the ladder for me to even get Blackboard to offer online support for my students. I was the first one in the career technical trades to do that when I came in. And then when we switched to Canvas, I was the first person to go into Canvas. And so we went online. I'd been already using this for a year. I've been using Canvas for a year, and I've been doing an online for a couple of years. And when we're in person, I use it for support. I'll put quizzes on there like we have in Canvas. I'll do some of that, but I put all my PowerPoints up there. I put, just a ton of resources up there that are easy and help students along with the grade book, because that way students can always see their progress report. But it's interesting. It wasn't even available 3 years ago when I originally said, hey, why can't my students have that? And so now I'm struggling with how come it doesn't work as well for my students as it does for the credit side. When are you going to fix it? So the discussion's changed, but I'm still fighting the good fight. We will get there. I know I hate it, Dell. I completely agree with what you're saying. It's terribly confusing for students. It also makes you feel bad because your thing looks horrible. And it makes my grade book look horrible at my end also. And I have no way of fixing it at this point.
Yeah, and at one point in time, I got a ton of emails saying that you graded this or you submitted that. It's like 30 or 50 emails all at once that,
Right. Yeah, because that's when I moved all the grades from the old Canvas to the new Canvas. And even though I put in grades, it still says the assignment's missing. It shouldn't do that.
I think you need better IT people.
That's what I keep saying, but yet they look at me funny when I say it.
Oh.
So we'll get there. I'm not going to give up because it's a problem. I deal with this problem every class, and it's really unfair to you guys. So I'm not giving up on it. It's just still not fixed, and I apologize.
That's all right. We'll stick with it and see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't forget. I keep pushing. I'm like an elephant. They keep thinking I forget stuff because it's been a year, and next time the problem comes up, remember we talked about this a year ago, and this is what you said and what's going on with it. I mean, they hate it because I remember.
All right.
Everyone, have a great rest of your day. And I think I will pull up a hot dog video to demonstrate how airbag technology is being used in other industries.